We're good to go.
Okay. Calling the meeting of the Moore County Board of Education into session. Is there a motion to go into closed session pursuant to the statement contained in Roman numeral 1A of our agenda?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll go into closed session.
Our first 7-0 vote.
Now, All right. Is everybody in place? Okay. Let's call this open session of the Board of Education into session. Let me first of all say welcome County Commissioner Jim Von Cannon and Board of Health Director Tom Lasapia. We appreciate you being here today. Okay, so let's go ahead and do I have a motion to approve the agenda with a modification?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to modify the agenda by removing item 3A, board member training.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay,
Just real quick, since we didn't get an opportunity to discuss it, I just want to clarify. I felt that we have a full agenda today, and also today is not the day to be having board member training, so that's why I wanted to make the motion to be removed.
That's important because we're not foregoing board member training. It's just a matter of time and logistics. Okay.
Now you need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Yes, there was a motion and it was carried
As
to
amended.
approve the agenda as amended.
No, we just made a motion to modify
That
it.
was just to modify the agenda.
Was to modify the agenda, okay. So is there a motion to approve the agenda as modified?
I make a motion to approve the agenda as modified.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? This motion carries. Okay. Commissioner Von Cannon, why don't you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sergeant Major Von Cannon.
Okay. Okay. And we'll just have a moment of silence. Okay, so let's now get back to the things on the agenda. We have an update on the recent school happening at Pinecrest. So let me turn that over to Dr. Locklear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board. Yes, Dr. Metcalf is here today to give a brief overview in our open session around the stabbing incident at Pinecrest High School that occurred on Friday morning. I just wanted to say that that we continue to keep the victim in our thoughts and prayers, and we will continue to support that family in any way that we can. Would also say that Dr. Metcalf is going to walk through what details we can share in open public session around that and the staff's response. But I just want to say that our students and our staff responded exceptionally to that situation. And we're just very proud of their response, very appreciative of how they handled that and continue to handle that. So a lot of gratitude for them in that situation. But with that, I'll turn it over to Mike.
Thank you, Dr. Locklear. Chief Hardy and I with the Moore County Schools Police are also very appreciative and honored to work with a staff, school resource officers, a community that responded in the way that they did to this unfortunate event on Friday. I would use the word heroic. There was a heroic response on that campus on Friday, and greatly appreciative of that work. Of course, the incident did happen on Friday. It happened in the back auditorium parking lot off of Voight Gilmore Road. That is the area in which the students in marching band season use for marching band, but after marching band season is over, it becomes additional student parking. All of these events that we're going to share today happened about 8:30, between 8:30 and 8:45, and I would note that there was a lot of moving parts and a lot of things happening at the same time. The suspect was dropped off on the lot. The victim drove to the lot. The suspect approached the victim after she had exited her car and attacked her with a large knife multiple times, striking her. The victim attempted to get away, attempted to fight him off. The suspect dropped the weapon and then attempted to get into the victim's car to leave the scene, but a student blocked with their own car, blocked the ability for the victim's car to be able to leave the parking lot. He moved his car in back of the victim's car. The suspect then ran into the woods. All happening at the same time. Assistant principal and a counselor who were monitoring the bus drop-off area. There were a number of other adults in the area too, but an assistant principal and a counselor saw the disturbance. The assistant principal immediately radioed for assistance, radioed for a school resource officer to come to that part of campus. Also asked for emergency services, EMS, to be called. There were about 5 students who were assisting in that. One student provided medical assistance immediately to the victim, took off his own shirt, and applied pressure to the multiple lacerations on the victim. Other students called 911, as did, obviously, the staff at Pinecrest called as well. An assistant principal and a teacher who were on site immediately assisted the student in trying to apply pressure to the victim's wounds. When the principal arrived, she replaced the student and continued to apply pressure to the wounds. She also contacted her supervisor. The school nurse, hearing the all-call need for support, arrived in the parking lot. She had brought her AED. She brought a trauma kit. In addition, a career education teacher who is also a registered nurse, she teaches our medical classes, she arrived to provide assistance. They assessed the victim, attempted to pack the deep wounds, and used saline on the wounds to try to keep them clear. School resource officer and a counselor went into the woods to follow, identify, and ultimately apprehend the student. The student was apprehended without resistance. The weapon that he had used, the large knife, he had left behind. He had left it near the victim. EMS quickly arrived on the scene, and together with the nurse, they placed tourniquets on the victim, and the nurse ultimately traveled with EMS and the victim to First Health. Another assistant principal, along with staff, throughout this period of time, were directing traffic away from the auditorium lot. Access to the lot was controlled, limited, allowed for the EMS and emergency vehicles, Southern Pines Police, what have you, to easily, quickly be able to get to the scene of the crime. While this was occurring, still another assistant principal announced a hold in place for all staff and students so that it could assess the situation. Shortly after that, the principal placed the school in a modified lockdown. This limits all movement, but we had a number of students. This was right before the start of first period, so students were being dropped off. There's multiple locations in which students access the campus, and so by going into a limited lockdown, we were able to move those students into their first block classes, limit any additional movement, and hold them in those places. The district's critical incident response team, CERT team, were notified to come to the campus and set up student and staff support area for any staff member or student who has needs. This is a group that rotates from a month-to-month basis. They are counselors and social workers, and if we have an unfortunate event, they are called upon to immediately go to the campus to provide any additional support that may be necessary to students or staff. Then a communication plan went into place. Worked very hard to provide updated information to the Pinecrest High School families, provide regular updates to the students and staff members who were in the modified lockdown on campus, obviously keep the board informed, and also provide statements to the media that quickly became involved and became aware as well. The principal made the decision to extend first block. This was to implement a phased sign-out process. Really appreciate the community's response, frankly. We went into the modified lockdown, notified parents that their students were all accounted for and were safe, but that we were in modified lockdown and that we would not be releasing any students during that time. Once we extended first block and were able to pull the modified lockdown, we went into a phased release. Set up tables out in front of the school, allowed for parents who wanted to pick up their child to come, and ensured that the parent had to be there for the student to be released to leave campus. That was phase one. And the parents on the whole responded to that very effectively. There was a little bit of wait time, but appreciated how they responded to that. We then went into phase two, which allowed for students who were drivers to be released as long as we had had contact with their parents in advance. So students who just wanted to leave without a parent or without parent notification were not allowed to do that. You had to have parent notification. This all allowed for a very orderly release for students or parents who wanted their child to leave campus at that time. Following that process, and once that quieted down, we moved quickly into third block and into our normal procedures at that time. After school, the staff held a staff meeting, a short review, debrief, and support. Decision was made by the principal and others who provided input on that decision-making, professional counselors providing input on that decision-making, decided to continue with the prom, which was scheduled for Saturday night. We did implement increased security measures for that. That included extra officers on campus. It included a bag search and metal detector just for a sense of security. We also provided counseling services at the prom in case students needed any additional support at that time. And we also provided employee assistance through First Health. We have a great relationship with First Health, and they provide free counseling for staff members who may need it, so that was made aware to our staff as well. We will learn a tremendous amount from this. We're in the process of scheduling an after-action review just to ensure that we have a continuous improvement on our processes and procedures, and appreciate the support of Southern Pines Police, of EMS, of the Moore County Schools Police, the staff, the students, and the community as a whole. I am quite proud of the work of all of those different people on this particular day. It was heroic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Metcalf.
Any questions or comments by board members? Let me say one thing. We appreciate the wonderful and professional response by Dr. Locklear, Dr. Metcalf, not just your staff, but the principal, the nurse, the students, the parents. While we're obviously going to learn some things from this experience, it was as good and as professional as I believe this board could even imagine. So we thank you very, very much, especially not just for what you did that day, but for what is obviously advanced planning and preparation, which, so far as we can see, went forward, if not flawlessly, then certainly almost as flawlessly as we could ever expect. So we very much thank you, Dr. Locklear, and thank you to the administration, and thank you to the staff and to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Levy.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
With that, let's go to our next matter, which is the approval of the 2024-2025 Moore County Schools calendar. Dr. Locklear.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Metcalf and Ms. Fall is here. You may recall Dr. Metcalf and Ms. Fall presented the two calendars that the board had asked the calendar committee to put together and then gather feedback from our community on. The first is traditional calendar that's based on current North Carolina calendar law, which a lot of our parents and us as well questioned the calendar law and not being able to start our school year earlier, finish that first semester before the holidays. But that calendar is based on what current law prescribes. There was some feedback from the board around spring break. I believe there were some adjustments there that Kate and Mike will walk through. And then we also have the early start date calendar and gathered feedback from the public on that. And that is a calendar that would start earlier and would allow us to finish that first semester before our holiday break in December, and for our high school students to take those exams, and it would align more with our local community college. And so obviously that would be our preference. However, as superintendent, I will recommend that we move forward with the traditional calendar that follows the North Carolina calendar law currently. But I'll let Mike and Kate walk through that, and then we're open to additional discussion and questions. Mike?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Locklear. Yes, at the April 10th school board work session, you asked us to bring this back in May to see whether there was any, I think part of the reason was to determine whether there is any movement on the state level with the early release, being able to finish that first semester prior to the December break. And to my knowledge, there has not been any movement on that that would allow us legally to do that. Based on board feedback, Kate did bring back the calendar committee to make some adjustments to the traditional calendar, particularly around spring break. So we did move spring break from the March 10th through 14th timeline, the early spring break, which was aligned to the community college on the traditional calendar, to a more traditional, if you will, more closer to what we've done in the past, aligning that with the Good Friday holiday. That'll be April 14th through April 21st. That allowed us to do some moving in February and provide a leave day on President's Day. I believe that's a military leave day for a lot of our military families, President's Day is. So the calendar committee tried to work that out. So the 17th of February will be an annual leave, and we moved the required day to Friday the 14th. That'll provide a long weekend, a 4-day weekend for our families, and that is something that comes up from our military families sometime. They'd like for us to look at President's Day because it aligns with the military. So this is the calendar. It does have 88 days in the first semester, 92 in the second semester, for 180 days, and it 1,068 hours. We're required to have 1,025. This builds in 43 hours, or about 7 days, in case we get weather or a reason in which we need to cancel school during the 24-25 school year. And I believe it's the superintendent's intention to recommend the traditional calendar for board approval.
Thank you. Any questions or comments by the board? Hearing none.
Just real quick.
Yes.
Just one word on that. One of the reasons why the board doesn't have any comments and questions is we've discussed this issue in numerous work sessions and business meetings. In fact, we delayed it. So most of our questions and comments have been addressed in previous meetings when this was on the agenda.
And just so that the public does understand, there is a particular law which does mandate what has been called the traditional schedule. And we were hoping that somehow the legislature would change that. And so far as we understand it today, they have not changed it. And it's also my understanding that there is one, am I right, counsel, that there is one LEA that has been sued because they decided to go to a non-traditional schedule. Am I correct on that?
Union County was sued, and that case has been resolved. The Board of Education changed its mind and went back to the traditional calendar.
Okay, so all wishes to the contrary. That may be a sign that we may have to obey the current law. And so even though I think our entire board would prefer the schedule that allows our students to finish up their semester at Christmas and also align with the community college schedule, but it is not to be. Okay, anything else by any board members? Okay, if not, let's move along. The standards day schedule.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Sinan's going to join us to present.
Did you want a motion to approve that?
No, we're going to do that at the business session. Because I don't think it was noticed to approve it here.
This is,
Yes,
It's a work session.
it's my recommendation at the business meeting that the
Yes.
conditional calendar is approved.
Yes.
Yes. So this is what we would call a routine matter. Ms. Sinan's coming to, each year we bring to the board what our standard day schedule for our schools are. That's our bell times, et cetera. I'll let Jamie kind of walk through that very quickly for the board, but it certainly comes with my recommendation that the board approve the standard day schedules for the 23-24 school year. Jamie?
All right, good morning. So you'll see the standard day schedule listed there for elementary schools. It's broken down elementary school, middle school, high schools. We've also included the times for the Connect Virtual Academy, just so that you are aware of when they started and when they ended their day. You'll see for the elementary piece, they don't have standalone specials. They do interventions from that 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. So the requirement is the length of the student day. The instructional day is 6 hours long. So they use that additional hour for intervention time and then also asynchronous learning. The other piece that you'll see that's a little bit different is Southern Middle will continue to use their calendar flexibility as a restart school. So you'll see that the times that you had approved this year for their calendar, those times they wanted to keep the same. So they have those listed in there. So that looks a little bit different than what you'll see for the other schools.
Any questions from the board?
Go ahead.
I did have a question, just to satisfy my own curiosity, that, our lower grades go earlier, but it's proven that younger children need more sleep. So, I'm not asking for it to be changed, but what's the thinking behind having those children go in earlier than our middle and high schoolers do?
I think you're right. There's trains of thought to that. You see some school districts where your older students go earlier in the day, and your younger students are later, and I think there's different trains of thought to that. When you think in the morning, as far as bus and getting to school, having an older sibling sometimes be available to help with the students getting on the buses and that kind of thing, it's been a train of thought. You know, some of the research also shows that your older students need maybe more sleep than your younger students, so it's really just been, you see different school districts do different things. I don't know if there's a necessarily absolute right
Sure,
in
no,
that
I
situation.
agree, that's something I noticed, anyway, maybe we could look into it in the future at some point in time, if we could make any adjustments to that.
David?
I have a couple questions related to the high school calendar. And here's my here's my questions. And some of this is based upon my daughter's experience attending Pinecrest. So if I understood the first slide correctly, if I remember correctly, the students have 6 hours of instruction and the faculty has 8 hours, an 8-hour workday, right? Mm-hmm. So if I remember correctly, that 6 hours of instruction for the students is divided up into 4 1.5-hour blocks. Is that correct?
Correct, with the exception is third block when they do lunch. That would be an extended block.
But it's basically 4 1.5-hour blocks. So I have two questions. One is, when my daughters attended Pinecrest, now you hear all kinds of things from, students and children and daughters and children and whatnot. But it seemed to me that they and many of their peers attended less than 4 blocks of education, especially their senior year, and some their junior year. They were only attending 2 blocks. So I actually have a compound question. So A, is that true that some students only attend 3 hours of instruction, or maybe even less, or 4.5 hours of instruction? And if that's true, how does that jibe with a B with state law mandating 6 hours of instruction?
Do you want to answer that question?
It is true. We have students doing a number of different things, and so you may have students taking 2 classes online, then leaving campus to go to Sandhills for classes. You may have students who are only at Sandhills during their junior or senior year. You may have students who are completing their instruction. They may only have 1 class to complete to be able to graduate. We have students who graduate early. It's really specific for the particular student and what their needs are based on what the number of credits they need to complete in order to be able to graduate. Help me out with the state law question. Is a state law that we,
Well, here, so let me clarify that.
clarify the question that
Yeah,
you've
so,
got for me.
so my question is, so does, and please let me finish my question, right? So does the state law mandate that every student gets 6 hours of instruction that they have to attend, notwithstanding the fact, well, let me back up. Does the state law say that every student has to have 6 hours of instruction? And if it does say that, is there an exception if they've already met the prerequisites?
Yeah, I think
Rich
Rich
can
wanted to-
answer that
Well,
question.
Rich can chime in.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know what the
now I
law, I
understand
haven't
your
looked up
question.
the
It's not a
state statute.
requirement for 6 hours of instruction in a particularly given day. You've got a requirement for the total number of hours per year in the school calendar law. And in various courses, you've got requirements for total number of hours, but not 6 per day.
Okay, so,
For a
so,
student to be counted as one of our students, in general, that means they're attending, they have at least 2 classes, that's connected to our school in general. That's in general how we look at that.
okay, so we have high school students that may just be attending school 3 hours a day, if they're on their path to graduation, and that's fine with the state law, is really my question and
For
concern.
attendance purposes,
Well, just to comply with all facets of the state law.
That would be my understanding, yes, sir.
Okay, so my second question is, let's talk about the faculty a bit, is, sitting through personnel reports and whatnot, it's my understanding, so there's 4, so faculty is required to work 8 hours a day, faculty and staff. And it's my understanding that faculty at the high school level are only required to only teach 3 of those periods. So the teachers, the faculty are only teaching in front of students 4.5 hours a day. Is that correct?
It's correct, they have planning
They
periods.
teach 3
Right.
periods.
Right, so the workload of the faculty at high school is they're in front of out of an 8-hour workday, they're in front of the students 4.5 hours a day. And then they have the other 3.5 hours to do administrative work, grade papers, whatever.
They would have one period, which is their planning period. They would have duties on the other. So they're doing lunch duty, they're doing other required, as directed by the principal.
Okay, and then if I just
Bus
learned.
duty, whatever it may be.
Right, so they have other duties, so their 8-hour workday is 4.5 hours, doing instruction, a 1.5 hour planning period, and then the other 2 hours are, lunch duty, bus duty and whatnot. So is that correct? Generally speaking, I mean,
Generally
that's the
speaking.
plan.
Yeah,
Generally speaking, yes, sir, and that planning period time could also be time for professional development, things that are required by the principal, certain meetings that are required by the principal, but yes, sir.
Grading papers or
In general, that's correct.
Okay, and I guess my last point is, looking at personnel reports, if a teacher elects or is asked to teach a 4th period, right, if they forego their 1.5-hour planning period, then we pay them extra to teach that 4th period, is that correct?
It is correct. They would take that 1.5 hour planning period on campus after school.
Yeah, so the thought behind that is if they forego their 1.5-hour planning period and they choose, I mean, we don't force them, if they choose to teach a 4th class and then grade their papers and whatnot after hours, then they're actually getting paid to do that because we pay them to teach the 4th period in lieu of grading their papers and doing planning, correct?
And PD, yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that I understood that and everybody understood that. Thank you.
But just to also clarify, planning period also I know is in middle school as well, right? And we have planning periods, I think, for all our teachers, am I right?
We do.
K-12.
Yes,
Okay, so it's K through 12.
yes.
Which, if anybody who's ever had to do a lesson plan, is probably a necessary thing, at least if the lesson plan is done right. And I know that our teachers, for the most part, put a lot of work into their lesson planning. Okay, so, anything further? Board members, okay. So let's go to the bid results and award for replacement of roofing at Elise, Northmore, and High Falls schools.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Purvis is going to join us, Executive Officer for Operations. Good morning, Ms. Purvis.
Good morning.
And this is really following up on some information we've shared with the board, and we've had discussions with our board, our Construction and Facilities Committee. And this is really good news. This is an approach that we discussed with the committee and went out for bids that actually is saving us money in our construction budget. So, Jenny, I'll let you walk through the recommendation here for the board to approve.
All right, we have some roofing that needs to be replaced and repaired at Elise, Northmore, and High Falls. We had 2 responsive bidders for that. The silicone roofing is what we'll be using. That has a 15-year warranty. We have ACI Roof Restoration Experts who came in at $416,361, and EnviroShield Roofing came in at $411,070. The low responsive bidder is EnviroShield, which has performed work such as this at Union Pines and Pinecrest. So it is our recommendation that the work be done by EnviroShield for $411,070. I can't say that right.
$411,070.
Thank you. It's a lot, but it's a lot less than we had allocated. Our allocation is $1,278,810. So that's a savings of $867,740 that we're pleased about. We'll keep that in our capital budget. As you may remember, we'll utilize some of those funds as we move forward in the purchasing of maintenance vehicles. We have some other projects that we'll be able to finish with those monies as well. So we'll utilize that as we move forward with other various projects. So we're looking forward to getting this work done, hopefully this summer.
Questions or comments from the board?
I have a question. When will they be able to begin once we approve?
We're hoping we'll have it scheduled for this summer.
Okay, thank you.
Soon as kids get out of school, it's our hope to get it finished over the summer.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, Mr. Hensley, the guy who helped save us. Was that 600 and some odd thousand dollars? 800 and some odd $1,000. That's not chicken feed. So that's extremely, go ahead.
Well, it could be chicken feed, but it'd be a lot of chicken feed. So, Ms. Purvis, the original budgeted allocation of $1.3 million, where did that come from? I mean, where did that number come from?
That was on the original capital budget allocation when I took over in January, and that original was for redoing those roofs without silicone, but taking the roof off and replacing. So
Right.
this silicone is an option that is a different option, but we've used it at Pinckney, we've used it at Union Pines and Pinecrest, and had really good results with
Right,
it.
so that $1.3 million, I'm rounding up a little bit for my critics. I know it's 1.278810. I can't be specific enough. That is what was recommended by your previous predecessor and approved by the previous board, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So the reason I bring this up is the editor of the pilot, Mr. Nagy, has chosen in editorials, last time that we saved the taxpayers 70%. We saved the taxpayers $6 million, I think, out of $8 million on renovating gyms. Instead of applauding this board and for making our educational dollars go further, and instead of applauding this board and for making the taxpayers' money go further, instead of choosing to do that for us saving 70%, the editor of the pilot chose to attack this board because we must be cutting corners, we must be doing shoddy work, we must be doing all this nonsense, which was factually incorrect. It was a political hit job. Because of that, I feel the need to ask the following questions. So we saved 68%, or about $800,000 of precious taxpayer educational dollars that we can turn around and apply to, say, getting elementary children out of trailers or whatnot, right? So my question to you is, are we cutting corners? Are we doing shoddy work? Is this roof somehow inferior to what was previously proposed?
This roof is not gonna be inferior.
Right.
We have seen that the work is good work. It is a silicone roof, which has a 15-year warranty. Now, if we were to replace the roof as it had been suggested before, we may be looking at 25 years or a little longer. However, with this 15-year warranty, when they come back, we will not have to start from scratch. So they would come back in 15 years. If we've had no trouble, then we will redo the roof again. But for the amount that we are paying, we are getting good work, and it is something that is reliable, and we've had good results with it at 3 other sites.
Yep. So I am hopeful, but not optimistic, that the editor of the pilot will actually give this board and Ms. Purvis and her team the recognition that they deserve and that we deserve for making the taxpayers' money go further and making our educational dollars go further, because we are not cutting corners and we are not doing shoddy work. And it's actually embarrassing that I have to bring this up in this meeting, strictly as a proactive attempt to keep the editor of the pilot from doing his personal vendetta, and again, giving recognition that we are making the taxpayers' money go further, and we recognize that those educational dollars are precious, and we are looking at alternatives that save the taxpayer money. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I can assure you, sir, that this was looked into, and it is something that our team has trust in, and we know it will serve the purpose.
I know it is, because we discussed it in our Facilities and Construction Committee, which oddly enough, the pilot had a reporter there, but in spite of the pilot knowing fully, the editor of the pilot fully knowing what we discussed, both with this and the gym rehab, he chose to, instead of congratulating us and thanking us for being good stewards of the taxpayers' money, in spite of him having full knowledge, because he had a reporter there, he chose to make false and baseless attacks.
All right, any further comments, questions by members of the board? Ms. Purvis?
I do.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I really want to thank you for the work done, and I want to thank David for the work that he did on his committee. I think that this means a lot to save our taxpayers this amount of money, and I really think that you both deserve a lot of credit for this. This is important. Thank you.
Anything further from members of the board? Nothing. Thank you very, very much for your very hard work.
Thank you, Ms. Purvis.
All right. Next, the alternative accountability model, participation for the Community Learning Center at Pinckney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Fall is going to join us again. This is something we bring in front of the board as required by state board policy each year. The board endorses the accountability model. You know, our schools operate under a state accountability model, and alternative schools in the state are required to choose an accountability model. The board is asked to endorse that, and this is the model we've used for several years, and I'll let Kate kind of quickly brief the board, but it does come with my recommendation for approval. Kate?
Dr. Locklear took my whole intro.
Sorry.
So, start in the middle.
I'm bad about that. Sorry, Kate.
There are 2 parts to this process. The first part is the alternative school progress model. There are 3 options the schools can choose from, and the CLC at Pinckney is requesting to continue using option B, which is a calculation of 20% student persistence, 20% school achievement, and 60% student growth. These components are then compared to previous years so that a change rating of either progressing, maintaining, or declining can be determined. There are no ratings assigned for 1920 or 2021 school years, but of the last 6 scores assigned, 5 of those ratings were maintaining at CLC, and in 16-17, CLC earned a progressing rating. In addition to the alternative school accountability model, we must also determine how we would like the state to calculate the alternative school performance grade in the event there is not enough data to calculate within a single year, as alternative schools are smaller. There are 2 options. One is returning all the data back to the base school and CLC receiving a letter grade of the school with the highest percentage of students And option 2 is using 3 years of CLC data to calculate a letter grade for the school. Again, the Community Learning Center is requesting that we continue to use the 3 years worth of testing data in the event that there is not. However, it is important to note that for the last 3 years at least, there has been enough data to calculate the CLC each year. So we have not needed to rely on this option. Thank you for your time, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Any questions or comments from board members?
I have a comment.
Yes, please.
Mr. Benway and I spent the day there last week. We were so impressed. What they are doing is absolutely phenomenal. Actually, neither one of us wanted to leave. That's how much we enjoyed it. We spoke to all the students. We spoke to all the teachers involved, the staff. We absolutely loved it. So everything that we're doing for Pinckney is well-deserved. And thank you so much for your report. That was great.
There is a
answer you
teaching opening at Pinckney if you'd like to sign up, Mr. Benway.
You know, I asked them that about 3 times.
So just so that the public understands, so Ms. Bruno is a teacher, is a exceptional children's teacher.
Yes, and those are the students that I taught, so I was so much at home. I absolutely loved it.
We'll take you to Human Resources down
Gotcha.
there and sign you up.
Let me add something to that, if I could.
Anything further? Yes.
Yeah, one thing became real apparent as we progressed through the different classes and observed what was going on. And you've got rock star types of teachers there, really. There was a different set of measurements of success, if you will, for these kids. And I think they've done a stellar job over there of really nailing it pretty well. There's some incredibly involved, complex cases they've got to take care of. One other thing, some of those outbuildings, the floors are falling apart. When do we schedule to rehab or replace those? I forget.
The first step is identifying it to the Construction and Facilities Committee, so I'll add it to the list.
Okay, I
And
was
then-
told it was on the list, but I
Well,
couldn't
it
find
may
it.
be, but it's not, I don't have
Okay, let's-
visibility of it, Ms.
We'll
Purvis.
put it on there.
You know. Okay.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Any further comments or questions by the board? David?
I would like to add that, due to the great work of Ms. Edmonds, our finance officer, we now have visibility into the cost per student in educating students in each of our schools. And I'm doing this from memory, right? But the cost of so my numbers may be off a little bit, but they're not off by much. But the cost of educating a child in Moore County, a student, ranges from $7,700 per year per student at Pinehurst Elementary to $13,000 per student at Robbins Elementary to $25,000 per student at Pinckney. And the cost to educate a child at Pinckney is approximately between 2 to 3 times more than it costs to educate a child elsewhere, anywhere else in Moore County schools. And in spite of that, there's not a single person on this board that minds paying that $25,000 per student. And not only do we understand the need, and not only are we willing to do it, but if you look into our budget for the next academic year, we're actually expanding the amount of money that we are spending on our alternative school at Pinckney. So it's a very important point that it is 2 to 3 times more expensive to educate and to educate our most troubled children, but that's an investment that every single person on this board is willing to make, and in fact, we're expanding.
I totally agree with that, David. It's more than educating a child. It's really saving their life.
Yep.
And so many of the children, because Ken and I talk to just about every student in the school, personally, we talk to them. And I can't tell you how many of them said to us, I'm here, I love it here. They have saved me, they have solved my problems. And the other thing that really came over is when Pinckney receives a new student, the other students tell them, look, this isn't the way we do it here. So with those teachers, the principal, they are doing an absolutely fantastic job in teaching these kids. So not only educating them, but teaching them about life, teaching them about the way they treat each other. It was phenomenal.
One last thing, I'd like to tie the Pinckney experience to your mention, Bob, of the ethos that exists in this, on this board. And clearly, we have a responsibility for those kids.
Yes,
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anything else from other board members? And let me say that you people, everyone at Pinckney, I believe, does God's work. Because we are, and I love our charters. I believe that our charters have a good place in Moore County schools, as do our private schools and the like. But we are St. Elsewhere, and we actually must educate every child. And there are many times when I have heard the following come out of another school, which says, well, your student just doesn't quite fit our school, so why don't you send them over to the public schools? But we gladly take up that challenge, because we here at the public schools know that every single child can be educated, whether that is an EC child, regardless of any type of disability. We are the place that educates those children. And Pinckney Academy is one of the places where we do a lot of our important work. So we thank you as a board. We thank you very, very much for what you're doing, and just let us know how we can help.
Okay, I have one other thing to say. The teachers there, some of them are getting up at 4:30. They're driving, they're bus drivers. They teach all day long, and then they drive the bus again. Absolutely incredible.
Okay, so anything else? Okay, so we thank you very, very much. Okay, the proposal to designate the English Hall at Northmore High School as the Iris W. Burns English Wing.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Per policy, Ms. Metcalf received this request a few months ago, but we also have been working with the family that made the request, and so I asked Ms. Metcalf to facilitate a community meeting on top of getting the request that's required with 50 signatures, just to have the opportunity for the community to come to Northmore High School and to comment on this and give feedback on this. I think overwhelmingly it's been very positive, but I'll let Ms. Metcalf kind of give a quick summary. This does come with my recommendation that the board does approve this request to designate the English Hall at Northmore High School as the Iris W. Burns English Wing. Tracy?
Thank you. So you'll note that just I summarized the family's request. Ms. Burns graduated from Elise High School, attended High Point College, earned an undergraduate in English. She taught at Westmore, 53 and 54, at Elise from 54 to 66, and Northmore High School from 65 to 88. She also served as an assistant principal while also teaching a full load of classes at that same time. She dedicated her career to the students and families in northern Moore County. We did hold a community input meeting. At that meeting, we had 27 participants. I also received 4 additional emails from the community. Of those, all but 1 were in support of Ms. Burns, of the wing being named after Ms. Burns. The one that was not was in support of Ms. Burns, but was not in support of the process of naming school wings. She noted that it was her belief that that might divide what is a very close-knit community. The buildings have been known for 60 years by their letters. She felt that they should stay that way, that there were so many educators there who could be deserving of having a name wing, and so while she was in full support of Ms. Burns, it was just the process of the naming that she was opposed to.
Okay. Any questions, comments by board members? Okay. Yes, please.
So when we name a wing after someone or a building, is there signage or something that goes up, letters like A plaque or
There's
something?
normally a plaque that goes up.
Okay, and the approximate cost of that?
I think that depends on what the family intends to, the family pays for it, so it would depend on what they wanted to pay for
Okay,
it.
so that was unclear in the proposal, so no taxpayer money is used for this, it's the family?
No, it is
or
not.
what? Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, hearing nothing else, we'll move on. The schedule for review for the school improvement plans for Robbins, Aberdeen, and Southern Pines Elementary Schools.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. You may recall that, and the board may recall that when school improvement plans were approved this year, the board asked to have Southern Pines Elementary School Plan, Aberdeen Elementary School Plan, and Robbins Elementary School Plan come back in June for the board to review and approve again. We have had leadership changes at all three of those, or are having leadership changes at all three of those. We have a new principal who just came on board approximately a month ago at Southern Pines Elementary. Mr. Poole will be leaving us in June, and we'll have a new principal coming on board at Aberdeen Elementary. And Ms. Loretta retired and left us in March, and so we'll have a new principal coming on board at Robbins Elementary. Due to that, I would request of the board that you would extend that timeline for those schools coming back with their revised school improvement plans to our normal process that happens in the fall, that we'll be bringing back to you in October. And so that's the request I have for you today, and ask that you approve that.
And just one question, that's after the EOCs and the grades come back, am I
That's
correct?
after, that would be after, that's all part of the process of getting that preliminary data over the summer. It doesn't become official till October, but they're incorporating that in their school improvement planning, revising it, all of our schools do. And so, yes, sir, that would include that data.
Okay, questions, comments by board members? Yes, Mr. Hensley?
Anyone else have anything? I just want to remind everyone, because it's been quite a while since we've talked about these, but the three schools in question, of the three schools in question, two of them are F-rated schools. That would be Robbins Elementary and Aberdeen Elementary. And the other school, Southern Pines Elementary, was a D-rated school that had not shown improvement for many, many years. And for many reasons, this board felt that the school improvement plans were not ambitious enough and they were not specific enough. So that's why we conditionally approved them with a requirement that the principals come back with more ambitious plans that, for example, we found not the mission statement, but the vision statement. The Southern Pines Elementary vision statement, which has been a D-rated school for many, many years. We found that their vision statement of all are welcome was not sufficient enough, and perhaps maybe the principal should consider, mentioning education in their vision statement. But I find it interesting that rather than come back with a more ambitious, more appropriate school improvement plans that would actually, improve the schools, that all three principals chose to, do something else and leave Moore County schools. That's all.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, so what that's going to be, I take it, Dr. Locklear, is for our business meeting is going to be your recommendation to put this off until the October meeting?
Yes, sir, our normal time frame for bringing school improvement plans for your approval, which is in October, yes, sir.
So we'll have-
Through November and December.
So we will have a new group of schools plus these three schools?
Yes, sir, and if we have any low-performing schools, at that time, we'll be bringing those forward to you again. We'll bring those each year. If we have low-performing schools, we're always bringing that to the board as well.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I do have
Yes.
something. Is it too late to add that?
No, it's not too late to add anything.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ms.
I
Brown.
remember one of the school improvement plans, and this was very upsetting to me, is that the teachers being backed by the administration was going, and I'm not exact, was going to improve from 22% to 33%. I mean, I cannot believe that an administrator doesn't back their teachers. And that is really the one thing that really, really bothered me about this.
Oh, just real quick, just for clarity, Pauline, you're referring to the teacher climate surveys?
Yes, I
Where,
am.
where one of the schools in questions had extraordinarily low ratings by the teachers.
By
where-
the
Where the
teachers.
principal did not
Yes.
back the efforts of the
Yes.
teachers, right? And that was
Yes.
part of the annual North Carolina teacher survey.
you're
That's what
correct.
you're referring to. Okay, thank you.
Okay, it just really bothered me because I've been in schools for years and I have never, ever not been backed by an administrator. And that to me is awful.
Okay, well, that's one of the things that we'll take
So
up.
that's really
Yes.
what I'm personally looking for.
Okay, so maybe that can be telegraphed to those people who might be creating these plans.
It's absolutely an expectation, and we definitely take very seriously the North Carolina Teacher Working Conditions Survey. It's given every 2 years, but our principals are asked to do what we call dipstick surveys in between that timeline to see how our teachers and staff are perceiving various things across the school. Support for school discipline is one of them. And certainly it's an expectation that we're doing that and working together as a staff to do our very best to have a safe, disciplined, orderly, and caring environment. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because if I had an administrator that didn't stand up for me, I wouldn't want to teach in that school.
And that's why school culture is so important.
It is.
If you don't have a positive school culture, your staff's not going to want to be there. And, you know, while compensation is important, school culture and enjoying where you work is even, sometimes is even more
Oh, it
important to our
is,
staff.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because everybody needs to be happy.
Yes, ma'am.
Further questions, comments from board members? If not, let's go ahead and move on. The award of a service weapon, Dr. Locklear.
Yes, sir. In various law enforcement agencies, there is a tradition to award a retiring member of the law enforcement agency their service weapon. General statute, and of course, Moore County Schools is unique to have our own special police, but there is a general statute that does allow for the governing board of a law enforcement agency to award a service weapon, the governing body of that organization to a retiring member, as long as that person is eligible to receive it, and with an agreed-upon price by the retiring member and the governing board. Additionally, as a school board, the school also has the authority under General Statute 115C218 that the board could declare the gun surplus and then negotiate on a price for sale to the retiring member. With all that in mind, it is my recommendation that the board does award this service weapon to Corporal Bruton, who's retired after many years of distinguished service to Moore County Schools for an agreed-upon price of $1. So that does come with my recommendation.
Chief, do you have anything also to add?
No, sir, just that I'm missing as a member of my team, but I understand his retirement.
Okay, all right. Questions, comments by board members? Yes.
Sorry, do you have to do the dollar amount? Is that required?
It is,
Okay.
by general
Yes.
statute, yes.
That's what I was wondering. Okay.
It doesn't have to be $1, it has to be at an agreed-upon price.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Hensley?
So I think to everyone's surprise, I expressed some concern about this. And when I say to everyone's surprise, you know, again, I've said this before, law enforcement has no greater friend than myself. But, you know, the law is the law, and I have some concerns. The first thing, and this has nothing to do with the law, but I got to question the fairness of this, because if we're going to give, and I understand the tradition in law enforcement, but I also understand that tradition comes from law enforcement agencies that generally stand alone. And the first thing, and I'll get into the particulars of the law in just a minute, but my first concern is one of fairness. You know, we are in effect giving a retired law enforcement officer, a member of our Moore County School team, a $500 gift. And my question is, you know, do we give gifts equivalent to $500 to every faculty and staff member who retires? When a bus driver retires, do we give him or her something equivalent to $500. When a teacher retires, we don't even give them their laptop, you know. So one is there's a question of fairness. But, you know, it's a law enforcement tradition, so, you know, that's just something that we have to take into consideration. I do have a couple questions, though, because I looked up the general statute, and I find it interesting. So it says, and I'm reading verbatim, by the way, the general statute's right there, 20-187.2. I just pulled it up on my phone. And it says, the governing body of a law enforcement agency may, in its discretion, also award a retiring member, upon request, the service sidearm of a deceased or retiring member at a price determined. That's where the $1 comes in. Anyway, the key thing is it says the governing body of a law enforcement agency. That would be this school board. I've been on this board for 2.5 years, and this is the first time that's come up. I've watched many school board meetings in the past because, you know, prior to and subsequently taking office, I've watched pretty much every school board meeting or read the minutes of them for the last 4 or 5 years. And I've never seen this particular item come up as an agenda item. So, Dr. Locklear, how has this been handled in the past?
The last record that I looked at is from our now passed away former Chief Arthur Fry, who was awarded his service weapon. That was approved by the superintendent. When Chief Hardy came to me with this request, he also came to me with the general statute, and we reviewed it together. That's when I paused. I did engage with counsel to confirm whether I did not think I had the authority based on how the general statute read, and counsel approved that.
Let's not say what council said, but whether
but yeah,
your
but-
conclusion was.
Based on how I looked at it, I felt like I needed to confer with counsel, and I felt like the board needed to approve it.
It says it right here, the governing body of a law enforcement agency may. It doesn't say the superintendent may. So I have concerns that the previous superintendent violated, at least on one occasion, the North Carolina general statute. And that's a violation of the law. And since I happen to be in the firearm business, if I illegally transferred a firearm to an individual, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms would come and, you know, take some sort of action against me, and they would go and they would retrieve that illegally transferred firearm. So this is an issue that I think we need to look at, is whether or not, I mean, it's pretty clear to me that those firearms were illegally transferred by the previous superintendent. So I would say that doing our fiduciary duty is that we need to ensure that our council looks into the ramifications of that, and perhaps we might want to circle back and do that correctly so that we don't have one or more illegally transferred firearms by the previous superintendent.
I would say that, you know, it's my instinct to approve it, right?
Right,
It
yeah,
was my
yeah.
instinct to approve it immediately because I certainly support the tradition and honor the tradition. But, you know, again, the chief and doing his due diligence and me and doing, you know, I took a second look at it, and that's why we're bringing it to you.
Oh, yeah,
tonight.
yeah, no, I understand. I'm concerned about the past actions that happened just within the last year, or certainly the last 15, 16 months. And there's been at least one occasion of that, maybe multiple occasions. And I'm not making any judgment whether the officers, you know, deserved it or not. My God, you know, maybe, you know, setting the fairness question aside, of course they do. But my question is the actions of the previous superintendent. But let me move on. There's another issue of the law that I think we need to have our superintendent look into, and I voiced this concern over the weekend, is the law, and I hate to sit here and read this, but remember, it says the governing body of a law enforcement agency, the governing body. So you would think that's us because we're the governing body of a law enforcement agency. But then, for some reason, the statute goes on to define what a governing body is. And I don't believe any of these tests fit Moore County schools. So quite frankly, I don't think Moore County schools. It is very clear by the statute, at least in my reading of it, that Moore County Schools does not have the authority. An alternate reading might be that the county commissioners could do it, but I'm not even sure of that. So I'm sorry,
Go
have you, well, just let me continue, or, I mean, if you have an opinion on this, we could go into closed session and discuss it.
We looked into that, and our recommendation is that you also declare it surplus under General Statute 115C518, and then proceed with the sale as authorized under 115C518. We think we can wiggle in under, I mean, we think it's just an oversight because we're such a unique agency as to the definition on the governing body, but we recognize that question.
Right.
So our recommendation is that the board also proceed under 115C518 to declare the property surplus and then authorize the sale under private negotiation.
So we could just start doing this with buses and other, well, let me finish reading the statute and let me voice my concern. So the statute continues, right? It defines governing body, and it says governing body shall mean for all county, well, it taught for all county and local alcoholic beverage control officers, which we're not alcohol and beverage control officers, so I'll skip that. And then it says, for all other law enforcement officers with jurisdiction limited to a municipality or town, the city, town, and council, right? So our officers are not, they don't have jurisdiction limited to a municipality or town, and we're certainly not a city council. Then the third definition is for all other law enforcement officers with county-wide jurisdiction, the Board of County Commissioners, right? So one would think that our officers have county-wide jurisdiction, but I don't believe our officers have county-wide jurisdictions. I think our officers only have jurisdiction on campus. So when you read this, because, as Mr. Schwartz pointed out, 7 or 8 years ago, or however long, 10 years ago, the General Assembly hastily passed an act called the Board of Education Police Department. They did not go back and fix these other parts of the general statute. But this general statute is very clear. It says governing body shall. It doesn't say the previous superintendent shall. But then it defines governing bodies, and I don't see anything in here that authorizes us, regardless of whether we want to do it or not. I see nothing in here that authorizes us. And if the General Assembly wanted to give us that power, then we would be listed in there. And the fact that we are not listed in there is evidence that the General Assembly doesn't want us to have that power. And if anything, it is a responsibility of this board to ensure that the law is followed 100% of the time, and especially the law is followed in regards to transferring firearms.
Yeah, I think that's the reason why council said we would proceed by 115C518 as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. Because what that does is it's a different statute, but it declares the firearm surplus, and we get to sell it effectively. Am I correct?
Right, we have to declare that it's no longer necessary for public school purposes and authorize its sale in accordance with 160A.
To that, I would respond, we're expanding our department. Of course it's necessary. We need more weapons, not fewer weapons. And what you're doing is, at a time that we're wanting to expand our department, we're going to try to make the case that this is surplus, when the fact of the matter is we need more service arms, not fewer. And again, this has nothing to do with the retiring officer. I mean, quite frankly, I would be more than happy to purchase a firearm and give it to him or her myself. This has to do with complying with the law, and that is one of the fundamental fiduciary responsibilities that this board has, regardless of our personal feelings on this particular application.
And my feeling is we are complying with the law. To do otherwise would, I think, be an insult to this officer. And regardless of our intention, I get the fact that we can declare it surplus because, quite frankly, we're gonna have to purchase firearms, and they probably should be updated and good firearms for our newest officers. I think all in all, one of the things we do when we do this is we're giving a firearm to an officer because with his training and the like, we don't want that to go to waste in the community. And we're hoping that he will use it to defend his own household and defend the community and act in the highest tradition of law enforcement as he has in the past. So, at any rate, anything else from members of the board? If not, now I intend to go forward with our last couple of things and not break for lunch. If you want to break for lunch, let me know. But we have only two small items here. Press on. Okay, thank you. Next is the appointment of the...
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Tracy.
Yes, thank you, Chief. Yes, thank you very much. The appointment of San Jose Community College Board of Trustee. I might add that we are going to have an election, so to speak, next at our business meeting with respect to the appointment of a trustee for Sand Hills Community College. I have consulted Robert's Rules of Order, and it's very explicit. It does need to be a majority of the board for that appointment. Robert's Rules of Order is explicit in that. So with that, Dr. Locklear, do you have anything to say on it?
No, sir, other than Board Clerk, Ms. Parker, she provided the information on the folks who had submitted their interests. So the board has that information, and if you need any additional assistance with that, please let me know.
Okay, anything else? Other questions, comments, and the like? Yes.
Bob,
Yes,
is
ma'am.
there a date that we have to have this done by?
The only thing I understand is June 30th. Am I correct?
That's correct. Starts in July, their term starts July 1.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, and there is one additional thing. There is a bill, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Council, is that Senate Bill 719?
I think it's, yes, it is 719.
719, which may, if passed, take our appointment away. If we do make the appointment now, then I guess we have an argument that that person takes office on June 30th. I don't really know what happens if we appoint and that that 719 is passed. I don't know whether our appointment actually takes office. Do you have any guess or counsel?
I'll look it up and let you know before the end of the meeting.
Okay,
But that's if it passes in its current form, so.
yes, and it's still in the legislature. So, we do have resumes from, what is it, 7 candidates?
Yeah.
For that, and please feel free. What we did not do this year is I did not appoint a special committee to make recommendations or anything like that, figuring that everyone should be able to do his own due diligence and also make up his own mind as to who is best and what is best and the like. With that, is there any, are there any questions or comments on any particular candidates or anything about this appointment? Hearing none, let's move on. Okay. So we have the school board meeting agenda for May the 8th. And this is what I would have. I would have a vote on the approval of the Moore County Schools calendar. Is that
That's
okay with
action.
everybody?
Action.
Action item.
Actually, I want action on everything except item E, and since any individual member can take things off the consent agenda.
Well, that's fine.
So I would like to see action on everything except item E, which can be on the consent agenda.
I actually had E as action.
Okay, then everything's action for next week.
Okay, so, yeah, because it has to be unanimous for it to be on the consent agenda. So everything is an action item. Okay. So, moving along right away, any reports from any committees? Yes,
Yeah, from the CTE committee, due to events that occurred Friday, we back up, happened to be down at Pinecrest, getting ready for a CTE committee meeting when the event took place down there. So we've postponed that with a date TBP, and we'll get on that and get a date going. I would just like to add that I want to commend Dr. Metcalf and the entire staff down there at Pinehurst at Pinecrest for the collective effort they put forth and the efficiency with which they operated. It's an excellent, real professional job. Thank you.
okay. Any further reports by committees? Yes, sir.
Yeah, we had a safety discipline committee scheduled the day of the incident, and that is to be determined as well. So, but absolutely, but to piggyback off what Ken said, you and your team, Dr. Locklear, y'all did a great job. And our prayers going up to this young lady.
And I might also add that the policy committee had a meeting. We did not take up any action because we needed more, the council needed more time and administration needed more time to go over the various policies. So that has been rescheduled. I don't remember exactly the date of that, but that will be posted. Any further reports? Ms. Bruno, tell us about your reading initiative, because I think that needs to be talked about to the public.
Okay, I had quite a few grandmas and grandpas who were very interested in coming into the schools to read and mentor our children. So we had that taken care of, and I thank you very much for doing that. A lot of them are so happy with it. I think we're going to have another training because a lot of the people who were interested were not able to make the training. And the training was absolutely wonderful because I thought, now, why do adults need training to read to these children? But it wasn't training. It was just wonderful how to really go about it and how to reach these kids and adding prefixes and suffixes and it was just great. The curriculum specialist did an awesome, her name went Adam, just.
Dr. Rachel Burris.
Yes, yes, they did such a good job. Everybody enjoyed it, everybody had a great time, and these people are going into the schools and actually bonding with these kids. So.
Okay, I apologize. Okay, and I want to, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Hensley.
Mr. Chair, I request that we take a 5-minute recess.
Okay, is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
If it is, 5 minutes, it is. Oh, that's right, between,
Procedural issue.
on a procedural issue with regard to the modification of the agenda. What I really wanted to say before we do that was I wanted to commend Ms. Bruno. I wanted to commend her for working so diligently and so very hard at working on reading and the like. And we are a land of grandmas and grandpas, of which some of us around this table are, or at least I certainly am. And they have some time to devote to our students. And she has found a way to make sure that that occurs. So I appreciate it, Ms. Bruno, and I know the board appreciates it. Now, with regard to the agenda, Mr. Hensley has asked to modify the agenda so that we can discuss what I'll talk about as the email situation and the release of text messages.
I'll make a motion.
And now, first, is there any objection to modifying the agenda so that that can be brought up here and now?
No.
No.
Okay. The chair declares there being a 2/3 majority, the agenda is modified to deal with emails and the like. Mr. Hensley.
I would feel more comfortable making an official motion. That way,
Okay.
that way we have an official title. Mr. Chair, I make a motion to modify the agenda for the purpose of releasing, public records.
A
Is there a
second.
second?
A second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any
Okay, so-
opposed? It's passed.
So let me discuss the issue, so now we're gonna discuss the release of public records. So I want to start off by saying release of redacted public records. So let me start off by saying is this board stands for transparency. There's no school board probably in the state that's more transparent and insists on more transparency than this school board. And there's people out there making political hay and jumping to conclusions and intentionally spreading misinformation. I want to say that there is not a single person on this board. There's not a single person on this board who, I'm going to do a double negative. Let me say it this way. Every single person on this board stands for transparency. Every person on this board understands that when we conduct official business and when we have discussions, that becomes a public record. And that was never in doubt. In spite of what you may hear and in spite of what people say, there is no doubt by any member of this board that when we had emergency notifications by our superintendent, that is in fact a public record. And some of the people who are trying to make political hay of this understand that's a political record because they make public record requests or FOIAs for our text messages and we give them to them. But in spite of them having full knowledge of that, they want to spread misinformation and they want to score cheap political points at the time of a horrible tragedy for our school, right? So we're going to dispel that myth today. And let me say the following. This board, our superintendent also believes, in fact, not only he's believed, but he's been tasked to ensure that the board is kept informed. And at times when there's, when the board needs to be notified of things such as bomb threats, shootings, whatnot, the superintendent notifies us under very rare limited occasions via text messages because it's impractical to do emergency notifications on emails to school board members because some of us have young children, many of us have jobs. I can say for personal experience, when I was notified of the bomb threat at New Century Middle School, I was in Ukraine, seven time zones away, And when I was notified last Friday of this horrific stabbing, I was in Poland. So, you know, I'm not going to use the word routinely because this is never routine, but it is very common. It is very common that text messages, and generally they go from the superintendent out with some questions asked. And again, there is no one who doubts that those are public records. But in spite of that, there have been reckless journalists in attention to, again, score cheap political points during this tragedy who've made all kinds of crazy accusations. They've spread misinformation. For example, it was reported that I was the one who instigated the text messages, when in fact I haven't ever instigated any of these text messages, and you're going to see because we're about to release them. I've not instigated any of these text messages despite what has been reported in the media. They've always been very appropriately started by the superintendent. So what we're going to do is, oh, by the way, unfortunately, you will notice that I use the term redacted because in these text messages that we're releasing, which are full and complete, and we can let the public judge for themselves, there are parts of these text messages that had personal information in them. There are parts of these messages that have to be redacted because there was sensitive law, and not much. It's not going to be like you're going to get this page and 95% of it's black. It's just a couple, blacked out. It's just a couple sentences and phrases here and there. But those redactions are made because they have their law enforcement sensitive information or their medical information about a student, or it's student privacy information. And that's the problem when you have the media recklessly releasing stuff that may or may not have personal and law enforcement sensitive information. So what this board is going to do at the conclusion of these meetings, we have them as PDFs, and there are 4 different situations that are being released, and these are full and complete. There was on 17 April when the superintendent notified us of the evacuation at Sand Hills Community College, and he notified us of that because we have students at Sand Hills Community College. There's a 19 April notification of the protests at Pinecrest and Union Pines. There's the 25 April bomb threat at New Century Middle School. By the way, think about that. Think about that. In 1 week, we had 2 middle school students, one who made a bomb threat and another one who threatened to shoot up a school. America should be ashamed that this is where our society and our culture is right now, where we have middle school students threatening to shoot up a school and another one threatening to blow up a school. Those are 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. That is what we must stop. But anyway, that is in the release. And then finally, the text messages that were, concerning the 28 April stabbing at Pinecrest. We are going to release these full and complete. People don't even have to ask for them. One of the reasons we're doing it full and complete is because the propensity of the media, formal or informal media, selecting and taking out individual chunks to do maximum, oh, look at this, these people are horrible. When you look at it in the entire context and you go, oh, wow, okay, no, that's exactly what it should be. And I'm glad that our school board, whether they're nursing a young baby or they're at work or they're 7, time zones away in a war zone, are actually attentive and are paying attention to the people's business in Moore County. So anyway, I'm almost finished. The last thing I'm going to say is these will be on PDF, and Cindy will ensure that they are posted, sometime today, I hope. But they'll be posted. There'll be an item added to our agenda titled Release of Redacted Public Records, and the public will have a full and complete transcripts of all of the text messages among the members of this board concerning the last 4 events that I discussed. That is it, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Okay, and let me also say that I'm not exactly in favor of this because I believe that these things deal with school safety, which should be confidential. That being said, for some reason, the media has gotten a hold of them anyway. So that since the media has gotten a hold of them anyway and decided to publish them, I think irresponsibly anyway, then the best thing that we can do, regardless of whether I personally believe that it should be held confidential, is to release them because the public needs to know that we're not hiding anything. But I don't think that the media does us any good by taking text messages which deal with school safety, which is one of the exceptions for closed session, and publishes them. I think they do detriment, and I think they do harm, and I especially think that the media does harm to our ability to deliberate and to come to some conclusions about things, although that didn't happen at this time. But when the media starts publishing such things, then we are hampered by our ability to make sure that not only is our campus is safe, but that the so-called bad people don't know and don't understand what measures we're taking to make our campuses safe, because that's part of the overall safety of our campuses. So while we did not deliberate, in my opinion, at these times, when the media irresponsibly, I say irresponsibly, publishes things with regard to private conversations with regard to school safety, they compromise the school safety that we need to rely on. That's my piece. Okay, anything else? All right.
Yeah, Bob, I have something to
Yes,
say.
ma'am.
Yes, I'm very proud that we're going to do this and show the public exactly what we said. We have no secrets. I think it's absolutely terrible that the media takes advantage of a tragic event like this to try to make Moore County School Board look bad. I think it's appalling, and I think they should be ashamed of themselves. The only interest we have here is taking care of that girl and taking care of the rest of our students, and to try to get back at us because we're sitting in these seats. That's it.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
We're in board comments. Yes, sir.
One other item, I told you I'd try and get this before the end of the meeting. It is not Senate Bill 719 that deals with community college, it's Senate Bill 692.
Okay, thank you for that correction.
And the way that is currently worded is the current members serving on a board as of the effective date of the act would remain in place. And the act would only affect anybody who's not currently serving. So if it goes into effect, if the board makes its appointment and that person takes office on or after July 1 at the start of the term, depends on when the act goes into effect as to whether or not they actually take office.
Do you know when do acts generally go into effect? Immediately?
Well,
or
no, it depends on whether or not the General Assembly has adjourned at the time, it adjourned within 10 days after passing this, and the governor usually has 10 days to sign off or not sign off. But if the General Assembly has adjourned, he's got 30 days. So it depends on when it depends on when it passes, depends on whether it passes in this form, and whether or not the governor vetoes it and they have to override. So we just have to wait and see.
Okay, but we go ahead and make our appointment and keep
Yes,
our
you
fingers
go ahead,
crossed.
move ahead, and it just depends on which comes first. This, if it passes in this form, or the person taking office.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go to board comments. Anything further, Pauline?
No.
Okay,
I
Philip?
just want to really, really thank everybody for the great job that they did during this tragic event. I really thank everybody.
Philip?
Recently, Dreams for All gave out mattresses to a bunch of teachers. I think it was Saturday. And I just want to give a shout out and big thanks to Keith Moneymaker.
200 mattresses, I guess. Good deal.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Excuse me.
Dave.
Okay, Stacy?
No, just to kind of piggyback on what Pauline said, just thank you for everybody who did such a great job at Pinecrest, and my thoughts and prayers go out to that family.
Shannon?
Same as everyone else, just couldn't be prouder of the job that was done by everyone. And Ken pointed out a few minutes ago that we did celebrate our Teacher of the Year and Principal of the Year. And just coming together and seeing the camaraderie there, the encouragement, the excitement, it's a good time. And I couldn't be prouder of the group of people that we have working for Moore County Schools and leading them.
Yes. Ken?
Pauline and I arrive at High Falls Elementary School at 0700 tomorrow morning. At the dawn patrol, if you will. And we ought to finish up all of the elementary schools having been visited by next week, end of next week. And we're devoting May to going through all of the middle schools. So these visits have been extremely informative and valuable to us, and I hope to the schools and to the board too. Thank you.
David?
I want to say, I want to expound upon what every other board member said. So Mr. Metcalf gave a very, very brief overview, and I'm very thankful for that because the public needs to know what happened at Pinecrest to the largest extent that we can release it. But I do want to add that, you know, we were in a 2-hour closed session for a reason, and we got many, many more details than could be publicly released. Hopefully, all, if not most, if not all of the details will be able to be released over time. And the reason I say that is because as more and more details come out, the public is going to be, it's going to become crystal clear the remarkable actions of our faculty, staff, and students in response to the tragedy that happened at Pinecrest. And let me say this, if it wasn't for the immediate action of both the faculty, the staff, and the students, that there would have been a very, very different result. And Mr. Metcalf used the word hero, and that's a word that, you know, I use very, very, very sparingly, but it is 100% appropriate. And again, as the details come out, I believe that every citizen in Moore County is going to realize that that is a very, very appropriate word. So, you know, I am very thankful for those people who reacted on the scene and for what they did. It's actually very remarkable, and the planning that went into it. So anyway, thank you.
Okay. And just from me, once again, thanks to our administration, our staff, our nurses, our students, and our parents, because during an emergency, during a tragedy, they kept their cool, and we kept schools going, and we even had, I understand, a wonderful prom. So thanks again for everything that was done by everyone here. I think I can speak for the board and say that we appreciate your efforts and your professionalism. And with that, is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, to adjourn. Okay. Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.